we get to speak. Wow. I can imagine you've been so busy with everything that has been going on, and I'm so glad you can get some time.
Not a problem. I'm glad we have the communications today.
Yes, indeed. Let's hope they hold up, because they have been precarious. Just want to say, first off, thank you very much for all that you've done. And of course, I have already done a small introduction of yourself on Freedom Central with Angel Lucci 2 weeks ago. And the work with the OPPT, which of course you say is really everybody's work, it belongs to everyone. It's become such a phenomenon, and it's gone absolutely viral, and it's one of the fastest spreading campaigns I've come across, and rightfully so, because this looks like the real thing in terms of gaining back our freedom. But what I want to do in terms of putting it all into perspective is get a little bit more information about how you came to be on this journey, doing what you're doing, and now ultimately communicating all this wonderful information.
Okay, well, how about we do this then? You just ask the questions, and I will just answer.
Please, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to this point? Like a little bit about the steps and where it, the journey. I don't even know how to ask the questions about the journey, because it seems to be so much and that went on, and so much of a mystery, because it was such a complex thing.
Well, if you want to do truth in a vacuum, then I can tell you just about, birth on. Yet it depends on people's level of comfort as far as dealing with the absolute truth. And
let's go absolute. Let's, for the hell of it.
For the hell of it. Okay. Interesting choice of words. Okay, so let's just say that let's do a story, okay?
Okay.
And within that story, whatever resonates as absolute truth with you or your listeners, they grab it, and whatever doesn't, they just set it aside, and hopefully the experience wasn't too boring for them. So, in the beginning, let's just say there was a whole bunch of eternal hearts sitting around wanting to experience the separation so that they could understand the mechanics of not only their own being, but that of First Source, where they are created from. And some of those decided to experience that separation consciously, just a few, and then most of them chose to experience it unconsciously, with a journey that was a little bit more challenging as far as agreeing to forget so that they could remember. So in essence, burying the treasure for the joy of finding it.
Wow.
That's me.
I am absolutely with you. And so essentially this is the ultimate game of discovery.
Ultimate game of discovery, it really is the ultimate game of fun. It's an ultimate game of measurable frequency. It is an ultimate game of recognizable energetic patterns. It is just absolute fun. And within that, in order to understand the absolute, you separate the absolute into compartmentalized fractals, if you want, or bits or pieces. And that's what I refer to when I'm saying contrast. Reconcile the contrast. Thank you so much for holding the contrast. You know light because there's dark. Dark because there's light. If that puts that in perspective.
Yes.
Go on.
I understand the concept of that. Yes, we need the darkness in order to evolve.
Well, yeah, look, it's all a matter of perception, filter of good and bad, evil and holy. They're just all one and the same, playing a game, if you will. I don't take it, lightly at all. But what other way can you describe it at this point? It's a play, it's a game, it's a symphony, just full of all these machinations that people are learning about now and have been hidden for so long. But this is the moment. This is the moment that was all pre-planned, and all those eternal hearts that are embodied in perceived evil or bad. They're the best secret squirrel or James Bond's first source possible. So we're all part of the same fabric, okay, the eternal fabric. And so when the absolute data is on the table and known, and it can always be known from within, but once it's all there, everyone will be able to have that aha moment and see through the course of their energy pattern all these wonderful things they experienced and how they all fit together. Some people refer to it as a butterfly effect. Well, just put the same concept in an energetic form.
Yeah.
So, then you come to this life manifestation of Heather, and it's just the last piece in that game, in that final act of the play, as far as I go. So it's fun. It's been fun going down memory lane. It really just doesn't interest me because I'm so focused on now, and it's so much more fun.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so but in this life, in this combination, what is it that you actually did on a 3D level? Now, I understand the ultimate, the absolute game, and myself very much have the spiritual awareness and understand my part in this game. So really completely so glad you went there with that. But now here, you've come down a bit of a journey that most people want to conscientize on this level. How is it that we have got to this point with the OPPT? And a little bit about the sort of the legal battles that you've been through.
Okay, well, let's just say, from birth on until a certain point, it was really just about me going through and learning how the machines worked. And, mind you that throughout the absolute truth data we just discussed,
yeah,
a lot of pieces have been laid since the beginning. And the surprise piece was what was laid before any of the game even began. And that's only becoming visible now for every being, every eternal heart in Source's universe, okay?
Wow.
So this particular manifestation was just me catching up with what was laid out, connecting the dots, learning how the machines worked so that everything could be reconciled back to absolute, taking those separations, those contrasts, reconciling them into absolute. And it's not just me that's doing it. It is every being through Source's universe right now conspiring for this final end game. Okay? So I'm just, right now, the public trust, OPPT, is the most visible part in this moment of now. But it's only one part of this incredible iceberg or facet of a diamond, so to speak. And so that diamond, I like that image better than iceberg. The diamond, Source's diamond, is it's going to start rotating here, and all the pieces, all the facets are going to be visible all at once. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I'm having a bit of an aha moment here. When I was a little girl, I used to have this image of myself as a diamond, and I used to think of, I used to try and define myself, and the only way I could define myself was as a diamond, depending on what energy hit me or what light hit me, depended on what they got from me, with
right.
every single person that I met, because I could never really define myself. I was always so different to every person I met. And I realized it wasn't so much that I had multiple personalities as my mother would have me believe. It was more a case of every person that came into my life influenced me in a different way energetically.
Absolutely. And, this ties into a piece that I'm working on right now with the new financial system. But each being, I love the last X-Men. There was a character in there, and she turned into a diamond, essentially.
Yes.
And you could see all these facets of her. And I just see all these eternal hearts in the same manner, but they're glowing with this warm, bright, pink, red, beautiful, golden, fringed energy within that. And you're absolutely right. Each being, when you put them all together, they are just each a facet. Not one facet more important than the other because they all make up the absolute, right?
Yeah.
So as far as everything that I was doing, simultaneously, all the other facets were shining and working and showing at different moments. You know, we just don't have all the absolute data visible at this moment so that everyone can see that whole picture. But that's what's coming into frame now. And that's why I guess I'm really eager for the diamond to turn a little bit, because the facet of OPPT, myself, or the boys, Caleb and Randall, it's not about us. This is about the whole diamond. It's about every single facet, which is every being within Source's universe. And we all conspired, for this to happen, this moment of absolute current. And I guess when I finally became very, absolutely conscious of these parts and how they worked, wasn't until I came to Africa, July of 2011. Or the end of June, and was able to really focus the energy. The energy is just so pure all over Earth, but more so, or more unfiltered or uninfluenced in certain places. And Africa was a really great place for me to come, to really just reach down and pull up. And I say that meaning going within to the eternal heart, just tapping into that absolute database and being able to take things back to what I call prime, which is first source, where everything's created from, an eternal consciousness, an eternal essence. So that is essentially when all of that became very aware, and Randall and Caleb really held the contrast, and anyone that came into my consciousness in the now, we were all a part of building this and filing what needed to be filed, and really we were just glorified secretaries. We weren't doing anything genius or amazing. We were just able to go in and recognize what already is, register it, and by doing so, it collapsed all of the unlawful, illegal systems that have commandeered, stolen, or enslaved all of that being, all of those facets, as many facets of that Source's diamond that they could. Does that explain it satisfactorily for you, at least for now?
Yeah, absolutely. But most people, of course, and they're still very much the people are programmed into believing that there is some kind of authority and control. They're the ones going sort of under what jurisdiction is recognized.
Well, it's funny because the very jurisdictions that they claim have to accept it or approve it or stamp it are the ones that are enslaving them. So, it's going to take some time, but really, who is going to argue at this point that somebody owns their body and their mind? I mean, who's going to really accept that? And if they do, okay, great. They do it knowingly, willingly, and intentionally then. There's nothing wrong with that either. However, how does it resonate with you if I say, Mel, I own your body and I own your mind, and guess what? Anything you create, it's mine. I mean, how does that resonate?
No, it doesn't. I like that one bit.
So if you go back and you just take it real simple, ask the question, what do I know? It really makes it resonate within the heart, because that's where all the answers are. So that's why I say, when you go back and read OPPT filings, number one, we pulled down and registered what is from the beginning. Okay, and if someone wants to rebut that, great. Do it with specificity and particularity. Say why someone owns my body and my mind. And really, those OPPT filings, they're not meant to be read with your mind. They're meant to be read with the heart. Legalese is a code. It's a deception. It is absolutely meant to discombobulate and distract and confuse the eternal heart so it separates from the mind. And that's what the whole legal systems are based on. So lawyers, it's funny, you'll get two groups together, right? And you'll get lawyers together. The lawyer for, let's say, Heather's side, who Heather doesn't really know law, doesn't understand the legalese, has to rely and trust, because Because when you see that bar license, you trust that they're going to represent your best interest because you're paying them to. Yet when your lawyer comes in and he knows the contract doesn't go with your best interest, and there's hidden clauses in there where they can foreclose on you, or you really don't have the ownership you think you do, the two attorneys get on the phone and they go back and forth, and bribes switch hands, or promises to do a favor later switches hands. And that's the game of legalese. Some of the judges out there have price lists, menus, where if you want a certain judgment, you can pick on that menu and you can pay your price and you get your judgment before you even walk in court. So the legalese was collapsed by the OPPT filings in that it was reprogrammed. The wording in there is very, very specific, and it's energetic, absolutely energetic, to recalibrate the legalese so that it no longer exists. Not in the way, and it's not necessary. So it no longer exists and has power in the way that they created it and used it. So does that kind of explain OPPT filings and maybe how people can approach them to understand them better? As far as looking at them with the heart and not the mind. They were never written for the mind. Only for the guys that know legalese, so they could understand completely their whole world just collapsed.
Okay, so let me take this one level deeper then, shall we? This whole legal system, I've always maintained, like, you get a summons to come to court, and a summons really is like, you talk about witches and stuff summoning devils and things. So for me, it's always been like there's been a kind of, the legal system is a kind of a spell on humanity. Would you say that with what you've done, you've broken that spell?
I mean, you can put it in that way. It's all energetic, right?
Yes, it is an energetic schism, really.
Yeah. So it's basically a fracture in the energy, and they have to use threats and coercion, because if you ever read a summons, if you do not show, this will happen to you. Talk about fear mongering.
Yeah.
It's an energetic schism in the natural order of the energetic pattern. That's at a deeper level, okay? At a very simple level, it's a violation. It's an invasion of the absolute being, because you're only saying part of it. You're not saying the other part. This is an offer to contract. You actually have a choice. We're a private corporation. We're not really a people's court. So, that is the multi-dimension in those particular operations, because in higher Ds, 5D, 4D, 7D, whatever you want to call it, they actually are, you can see truth for what it is. And what they do is they leave out parts of the absolute data so that it resonates with people on one level, but at the same level, they're not giving all the data, which is required for free will to be exercised, right? So if you knew that those courts were a private corporation and that summons was and the complaint were actually offers to contract, would you approach them differently?
Goodness, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's one way to kind of bridge that whole multidimensional issue, is show it for the absolute data that it is. It's an offer to contract, and you have a free will choice there. At the same time, it is multidimensional because it shows you the end, and this is a lead into what's coming up in the next few weeks here for absolute disclosure. It also shows you the level of dimensions that were behind our slavery systems and how deep they actually go.
Yeah, that's interesting. Indeed, because I would imagine they'd need to have many layers pushing down on us, being people who ultimately, I believe we're born as spiritual beings, ultimately deep down knowing the core truth that the divine plan is for us to seek freedom.
Yeah, to work through it, just understand the separations and what they really are, and then go in with your power of being and doing and just reconcile those back together into absolute. So that's where grace is a huge part of this last bit that is being made visible. Okay? Understanding that whether it's the Pope, whether it's Bush, whether it's Obama, whether it's Putin, Lagarde, whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is, they're all eternal hearts. That when you go back to their prime energy pattern, they're all eternal hearts. And if you understand what was done by each, to understand and know who we are, each of us, at that point, would you look at them maybe a little differently, or consider looking at them differently?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad we're getting on to this, but what you're saying is, because I myself absolutely believe that on a deeper level, these people, I don't know how high up it has to go. I've actually, it's funny we're getting onto this, and I'm sorry, I've got a million thoughts going through my head here, Heather. There is a book I'm writing at the moment called The Covenant of Salt, and I talk about how Lucifer actually contracted with the reptilians to anchor the darkness to evolve humanity. Mm-hmm. And this is based on my own research that I found and stuff that people, quite blow people away. And it's very much what you're saying, that I believe at a higher level, at some level, these people bringing and doing all the bad stuff and all the darkness, they will have to reconcile for the karma that they've created. And at some level, they must know that. So it is actually a huge sacrifice on their part to bring this darkness to us. If I think about it, and should we be sympathetic towards them, or should we support them? No. But we need to understand their role in all this, and ultimately, they're not the bad guys. They ultimately anchor the darkness and help us evolve.
Yeah, I was told a story about originated from India. I'll just tell you it in my vocabulary and my database, okay?
Sure.
And essentially, it was all these energy patterns sitting around saying, okay, we need this part here has to be played out this specific way. Who wants what roles? And there was a really particular dark role that had to be played, and nobody wanted to take it. And one energy pattern said, okay, you know what? I'll take it, but on one condition. While we're still in those manifestations, you need to tell me that I love you. And everyone's kind of sitting there going, well, why? Because if you don't, my energy pattern will be stuck in that frequency until someone does. And it really resonated with me. I mean, deep down, I knew that is truth. Now, it doesn't mean that has to be everyone else's truth. What I would say is, let's get all the absolute data, not one piece missing, out on the table visibly for everyone to look at, so that they can determine how it resonates. Because the way the pattern works is, when it's absolute truth, and absolute truth is a circle. That's why we use a circle around the Public Trust logo. Is everything inside has to now come into absolute truth. And when absolute truth that's the same from every point on a circle, because a circle is just a whole bunch of points connected, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, as far as reptilians or Pleiadians or any of the other distinctions, I don't see those distinctions. I only see the absolute at this point.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stories I've heard are pretty correct as far as the individual sources that I've heard them over the years.
Yeah. Now, the thing about the reptilians is, and I say this quite clearly to everyone, David and I just popularised information. This stuff has been written about. I mean, there's a book written by Reverend Dean Bathurst back in the Victorian era about the worship of the serpent. And you'll find like these images of half human, half serpent people turning up in medieval paintings, on 3,000-year-old Greek frescoes on the Pergamon and in the Pergamon Museum in Berlin. You see them there. So they very obviously have been around or been part of some culture at some point that, they moved amongst us and suddenly now they're not here anymore. No, hello, where'd they go? The gods of the past, where'd they go? They're all...
You see them in the tribal areas as well. American Kabuki printed that one conversation with the shaman from Africa.
Yeah.
And I had found that thanks to Rumor Mill News. I love seeing all the different doing by people. Pretty good collective place. And so it had popped up there at a particular moment, actually, that I was doing something regarding Africa. And I found it just resonated very clearly and consistently with all the other intel. And he goes into exactly what you just described, half reptilian, half human. So,
yeah.
I would just say people go out and look at the information that's already out there and been out there forever. Now, as far as them not being here anymore or being here, I think I know you're going to find when the absolute data is on the table that within the last 12 months, a lot of decisions, and actually it's gone further back, a lot of decisions were asked to be made, or choices were asked to be made. And the grace of it was that they were given the opportunity to make a different decision than what their embodiment had been practicing all this time. So there are a lot of those other dimensions, beings in other dimensions that know about energy patterns, know how the energetic accounting works. That's a significant part, the energetic accounting. And so they've made new choices and have gone over into light. And I think you're going to find in the absolute data that some of those very races that are accused of creating certain parts of our systems, if not all of them, we're actually right now helping to disclose them. So just keep an open heart and an open mind as all the absolute data, every piece is put on the table.
Yeah. Okay, so coming down, bringing this all into our present reality of sort of Vatican politics, etc. We've seen the removal of the Pope, well, his resignation, which, to be honest with you, I think we all saw it coming. It was only a matter of time, and we kind of knew that he had to either be killed or resign, because there is a prophecy of another Pope coming in, and it was said to happen of exactly around this time. It's not even like a joke as to how accurate this prophecy of Saint Malachi has been. But more specifically, we had the Dutch Queen resigning not even a fortnight before Ratzinger resigned. She stepped down, abdicated from the Dutch throne, and she is by far the most powerful queen in all of Europe. And she owns Royal Dutch Shell, Philips, I mean, huge amounts of the Dutch economy and big brands. And I mean, Shell, as you know, Shell Oil is massive.
Yes, I know. Very familiar with them, especially here in Morocco.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Yeah.
You know, if you follow the trail, okay, and this goes, like I said, I'm right now, if you look at your credit cards, for instance, there's a magnetic strip on the back, right?
Yeah.
And each being is an energetic being. And energetic beings draw things to them and push things away from them, or deliver things from them by magnetism.
Okay.
And as far as Dutch Shell, if you want to go back to BP and all those guys, they all knew what was magnetically being drawn and magnetically being pushed under the old energetic grid that was surrounding Earth, but specifically throughout, Source's universe, because our grid was not in harmony with many other grids. Hence that's, the saying that Earth is quarantined, right?
Yes.
And Earth's grid has been recalibrated. And I just had a conversation with G.W. Hardin and American Kabuki about this. All the energy grids throughout Source's universe were all made uniform in what I call absolute current, which is source vibration, source frequency. So nothing is allowed to enter into Earth or come out of Earth that is not absolute frequency. And that was in order to make it so that this upcoming moment of now, meeting all of Source's universe coming together in a reunion, was possible. So you're going to see a lot of moves being made right now, very visible, where certain quote-unquote very public heads of country, quote-unquote, and states, they're all going to be making visible their choices. The Pope is a big one, only because, there's data out there that the Pope is essentially, just an eternal heart embodied in a different dimension that's walking into the Pope. Now, whatever data, absolute data comes out about that situation, I found it, just really humorous that the day the Pope resigns, someone just happens to be there to catch a lightning bolt, hit the radio steeple, which is the top of the Vatican.
Yeah.
You know, and most people don't know, but those are radio antennas. And if you look at courthouses, you look at the White House, you look at many different public, quote unquote, buildings, you'll see all of them have that similar type of radio antenna going up.
Yes.
So they're being inundated right now with this new absolute current, and it's just making havoc within the slavery systems. And that started quite a bit ago. There were a lot of light workers out there working on that.
Okay. All right, now, let me ask you a little bit about there's various interesting people who've sort of come together through the exposure of OPPT. Since I started doing Freedom Central, this is a view that I've held, that there are many of us who contracted with each other before we sort of came here. And those of us who have are actually sort of coming out now, and it's all sort of like reaching out now and coming together and putting together and sort of, okay, you know, we've gone on our very respective journeys, and now it's time to reach that nexus point where we've come to do what we've come to do and work together, etc. And we've all known each other before.
Yeah, absolutely. We're being magnetically drawn to each other, and there's certain tools that we've set up so that when they come out, they just resonate so deeply in us that I already knew that. You know, I've never thought about it consciously until this moment, but I knew that inside as if I've known it the entire time. In fact, I think you and I were talking about that yesterday, and you had that similar experience. You know, that is, for me, a telltale. Just as much as if I'm drawn to do something, I get this, my molecular structure will explode feeling if I don't do it, and I do it. And I've never been led wrong. So when I start to feel this magnetic draw to people, and I recognize people a lot through words. Words were my chosen vehicle, and actually from the eternal heart all the way down. And I watch people's words, whether they're saying them or whether they're writing them. And I'm seeing a lot of people out there just starting to recognize each other, you know, by their doing and their being. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And it's awe-inspiring for me.
Yes, indeed.
You know, my heart just opens up even more.
Absolutely. Okay, now let's take this down to a practical level, on the most prosaic level. We have a lot of people on this planet who unfortunately are going through some really difficult times, and all very good and well say, yes, it's part of your journey and you need to go through these things to evolve, become bigger and tougher people, etc., or whatever. But realistically, there are people losing their homes. One of my very dearest friends is trying to get a child back through child abduction by the state. Child's in Canada. And I really want to know, like, sort of how can people now use the OPPT and the information, everything you've put out, all your wonderful work, to start really changing their lives. And changing their lives, they will up the vibration.
Okay, well, first off, it wasn't just my work. It was work from many dots laid over many, many eons, actually. So what I would like to acknowledge and give eternal gratitude to is all that energy that came together for this visible moment of now. And there is a courtesy notice, which Scott Bartle and Chris Hales and Ken Bartle went in and created. I looked at it and just sort of assisted in how the OPPT filings are used in there. And it is the tool. It's an energetic tool, multi-dimension, and it reaches the multi-dimension area of everyone's heart. So when you go in there, it's a practical 3D tool, and people will learn about its multi-dimensional energetic properties as they continue on. So if someone is, for instance, with their children, you know, most people don't know, when you go in, you have a baby, you sign these documents. Now, they're different international. I have 2 children born in Italy, and I have 2 children born in America.
Wow.
And yet we were told we couldn't even take the babies out of the hospital until we signed these particular documents. One of them was the Social Security, you know, for the SSN cards, Social Security numbers. And in Italy, it was a birth record I can't remember the name of it. I apologize. I'd have to go back and ask my husband. But they were basically the same function.
Mm-hmm.
And you enter your child in that system without even knowing, without even having all the material facts which are required for a contract. That's why all the contracts are void, and no agreement can stand if the people don't do something knowingly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this document, this courtesy notice, goes in, and everyone is already secure and registered across the planet, no matter where you choose to domicile. That's a domicile without an E at the end. Your body on the planet means wherever you plop your body. Your body is your state of body.
Yeah.
And when you go in to say, hey, this is what I be, we already did everything else and filed everything else for everybody. So nobody has to file anything. Right now, all you have to do is just stand there in your beingness, say, here's a courtesy notice, and refer to those OPPT filings, and let their lawyers come and rebut with myself and Caleb and Randall, because we're able to work. Like I said, it was a real energetic thing, but also a legalese thing. So I did not want people to have to go in and fight all that code and deception, or for people to take advantage of the people who didn't know the code and deception and say, we'll help you, and then by undue influence end up in a situation like what I was telling you about with the two attorneys on the phone, wheeling and dealing behind the desk just to get the people to sign an agreement where they can make their billing hours.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, so that courtesy notice is absolutely the tool, and it's the tool for people to, as they get comfortable with their being, they're going to understand how to modify that document for any matter that comes before them. For now, it's in a template form where it basically addresses anything. Just, this is who I be. Now, who do you be? This is my law. What law are you saying that you're operating under? You know, this is my authority. What's your authority? And then show me an agreement or a contract with my signature on it that said you can have authority over me. Nobody can produce it. And, well, actually they can, but they won't. Because if they do, they actually give you a paper trail of their actual crimes.
Yes.
So it's a very simple document. It's a very simple document that covers all these legal, lawful issues, but in such a manner where you don't have to worry about all that was done and understanding the mechanics of it. All you have to understand is that you be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So where can they find this document, Heather?
It's on Scrib. And tell you what, I can actually send you the links. I know Lisa Harrison, I think American Kabuki has it up on his website.
Okay,
his
brilliant.
blog.
Yeah, just send me the links and I'll attach it to the interview to make sure everyone's got it when they're listening to this. Okay, so now looking towards the future, what is it ultimately that we're hoping to create? Let's talk about the CVACs, what they mean, what they are. Have you got any idea how you're going to structure these things?
Yeah, they're already structured.
Okay.
The whole point of the CVACs was to make it so that there's it covered actually many goals, okay? The CVACs needed to stop the corporations from infringing, invading, violating the being. Simultaneously, it needed to create a safe harbor where the people could actually have what they thought they already had. So by registering a corporation that belongs to all the people equally and is there to service the people, the other ones would have to come forward and show a contract or some kind of registration secured to the ownership of the people, right?
Yeah.
Yet all the data has now out there that all these quote unquote countries are actually registered corporations, a lot of them in DC or New York. And US is in London, you know, so now they've really got to show, okay, they have to admit on the record under sworn oath that those corporations, they're not corporations, they are their people's government. And at that point, you have the clarity, yet they aren't going to do that because everything, all the fraudulent money paper, the current funds, they're all under the corporation. So they actually topple themselves. That's what was so fun about it. Put them in a corner. Damned if they do, damned if they don't. But here's the grace for you to go in and co-create with people. Just be honest. Be transparent. They didn't want to do that. Okay, so that's the CVAC on that level. Now, the other thing was, I'm not a person who really likes to have people tell me what to do, right?
Me neither. I hate it.
And I just really want to be. And I want to be more creative than going to Jesuit schools and being told I have to believe in God and the devil. Or going to law school and saying there are two things sure in life, death and taxes. Well, I can prove both of them wrong. So the data is out there, and it's just every term that came in front of me in the moment of now, and as Caleb and Randall and a whole bunch of others were sitting there talking, this wasn't something that was done overnight. I talked to a lot of people who worked all the way through DOJ, a lot of the bankers. You wouldn't believe how many insiders in this system worked to bring this moment of now. That's why I say there needs to be absolute data on the table before someone takes a pitchfork out and tries to attack one of these guys, And so the CVAC was constructed in such a way that everyone could be as they choose by free will, but the systems of assistance bring all the absolute data, not one piece missing, for any kind of system they want. Right now we broke it down into basic systems of treasury, systems of education, systems of health, that kind of a breakdown, very general. And the only thing those systems are to do is to assist the people. Well, what's assisting the people right now is bringing all the absolute data on the table, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the number one goal. Then once the data's on the table, everyone can sit and discuss and dissect all that data and determine what resonates within them. So the CVACs are really a loose structure, but safe harbor that gives the people the place to go in and check everything out. So, does that explain it satisfactorily for you, at least in those general summations?
Okay, yes, indeed. Now, my obvious question is, Heather, when are we going to stop having to use paper money? Like, when are we actually going to? When is the system going to stop with the illusion? When can we actually go back to something or do something else?
Okay. Well, see, this is the fun part. This is the end game, right? There are a few moves that are being done right now. I think it was Dee from Removing the Shackles. She works a lot with similar intel types, banking types, military types that I worked with. And there's a lot of chaos behind what I call the curtain. I call it the curtain. And the wizards behind the curtain. The powers that be, or the powers that were, however your listeners want to call them, those really are just brokers. They're not really the wizards behind the curtain that have created all that you see, that run the slavery systems. The powers that were that we see are actually just puppets or brokers at the best, okay? They live a very nice life, though. I will say that, in comparison to what we've been living all this time. So what's happening is they're making some final moves. They're going to offer a bone in such a manner, hoping that you'll take it. And if you remember when we first came out with the first magician, I think that we introduced it as the magicians. Then there was a second disclosure that came out and basically just answered questions, clarifications, things like that. And everyone asked me, why 5 billion? And actually there's 10 billion, because there was 5 billion in equity. Then there was 5 billion in damages. So everyone on the planet, except for those that caused harm, damage to the people, everyone has 10 billion. And I said that for a very specific reason, because of what I knew was going to come down at the end of the pipeline. They were going to offer a bone, hoping that maybe 15, 20 million would satisfy people, or maybe a $500,000 check returning their income taxes that were illegally collected. Those are just bones to, and even the 10 billion is a fraction of the value that they stole.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
we wanted to make sure there was a big enough contrast so when this moment came, people would be able to look within and recognize what is absolute truth for them. You know, what does someone believe their value is? Well, if you don't know that you be, you end up believing what they tell you, which is you have no value. You're worthless. You're a piece of crap. You don't produce anything. You're a lazy bum. Well, that's not true. Because if it was true, why are they spending so much money, time, and effort to manage and control you?
Yeah.
Okay, so now the fun part comes. They're going to throw a bone, hoping that the people will take it and say, oh, we have 100 in some countries that have signed on. Now it's common law. People are going to be responsible. Okay, well, great. Those countries, though, are those the people's countries? Please show us the agreements, the registrations, and everything else. Otherwise, did you just create mirror companies to the ones that were just foreclosed on?
Yeah.
So people need to ask questions. I'm not saying what it is. What I am saying is ask the questions. And Scott did a great job in showing just how to ask questions. And it's the same set of questions no matter what's before you. Whether it's your friend next door, whether it's your kids, you know, trying to sneak out through the night, or whether it's somebody posing as a police officer at your door with the gun, yet won't show you his bond and his oath. And so what's going to happen is they'll play that bone. The people are going to make their choices, and they're going to declare that it's all gold-backed and silver-backed, and you're going to find out here very shortly what fun the gold and the silver and all these other eternal hearts that are embodied in these precious metals have been having. Lots of fun. And they are a big, significant part of this end game. So if all of a sudden you start to see all those precious metals out on the streets in such a manner that you can visibly see them, you can visibly interact with them, you're going to start to kind of question, well, what the hell is in the vaults? What is actually back in the system if everything's out here visible to us and you're not controlling it? You can't touch it. You can't enter those transparent vaults where we can see this stuff. You know, this end game is going to be so magnificent. I'm so excited. You know, and this, I love it because a lot of people say, oh, digital system, you have Microsoft, Bill Gates, who writes all these programs. You have all these guys working to make these back doors for this moment, thinking we're going to take the old system back, right? Of the tracking and transfer systems. Well, I bring you back to that magnetic stripe on the back of your credit card or your driver's license, or, you know, that's just a data holding strip. And if you look at how these strips actually work, it stores data by modifying the magnetism of tiny iron-based magnetic particles. Right?
Yeah.
So think about it. Your body's energy. If your body vibrates at a particular frequency and it can magnetically draw anything to it, what if all of a sudden your hand becomes a magnetic strip of its own just by co-creating and co-enjoying with iron-based magnetic particles? So you don't even need these cards. Everything's run off of your own magnet. And if you think that what I'm saying is completely too futuristic, you know, think about the iris scans. Your energy pattern is just as unique in identifying you as your thumbprint, as your iris. And yet they can't be manipulated in the fashion that someone can put a latex coating over their fingerprint with someone else's fingerprint on it.
Yeah.
Or put a contact lens in that can actually identify you as somebody else using their iris print, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's going to get really fun here, and it's going to get very, how did Poop put it? Very Jetson type life. So I'm really excited about all of this, and essentially the internet, if you look at where the internet and even these magnetic strips, you know, IBM, it was used during World War II. And if you recall, I don't know, do you follow Saint Germain type messages and things like that?
No.
Yeah, I don't either until we started going through this, and all of a sudden, Saint Germain is very well known in the banking era. Okay, military complexes as well at the highest levels. And all that is what people would call an immortal, an elder, a divine. And that's the hierarchy structure that's actually being collapsed right now by their own choice. And he works a lot with Department of Defenses all over the globe and the banking sectors. And so if you look at the technology that's coming out, and this leads into Kesh, I don't know Kesh. I haven't looked at Kesh's proposals or his universal agreement, the treaties. However, as far as the technology goes, that's been around for a long time. And I know quite a few people sitting in a very dark hole in many different countries who were trying to get that technology out to the people for at least the last 20 years, if not more. And in the old paradigm, nothing ever happened. Nothing was allowed to exist unless it benefited the few that are the principles of the slavery system. So when Kesh popped up, I recognized the technology, but at the same time, my question was, why now, and who is it benefiting?
What is your feeling on Kesha?
I just, like I said, the eternal heart.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, my personal job is to make it so that all the absolute data comes out, not one piece missing. And in that, I focus on the eternal heart. So the eternal heart that's embodied in Kesh will actually disclose the intent of the embodiment. And if the intent is anything less than the highest good of all and damaging others, Kesh will reveal himself.
Yeah.
And all the universe, all sorts of the universe will conspire to make that visible to everyone. So I'm having as much fun as you are. My interest and my focus really are whatever comes into my consciousness right now, because that is geared to my particular path, which is in harmony with all of your guys' paths.
It's funny you say that, because one thing I'm noticing is a lot of the people that I've come to, because I obviously speak to a lot of different people, and not all of them are in this for the right reasons. And definitely I've developed a more discerning filter as time has gone on, almost where you pick up on their energy as to whether or not they are working because they want to line their pockets, or whether they're working because they genuinely want to help others. And it's as simple as that, as defining the difference between the two.
Right.
And
and the people should know. The people need, right now, some healing is going on. And actually that healing is a trigger for the eternal heart to come out.
Mm.
So what you said about discernment, I use the same energetic tool as the rest of us do, and I call them tools of resonance. Now, it can be anything. A security system within, a truth alarm, whatever you want to call it, but that tool of resonance, those are all honed right now and absolutely calibrated. So people are going to recognize things that they normally wouldn't even be aware of. They wouldn't pay attention to. It's going to draw in, and something's not going to sit right. You're going to go back and you say, okay, what was funky there? And you're going to figure it out. The data that you'll need will present itself for you to figure that part out. Just ask, what do I know? Something feels funky, just ask, what do I know? And the whole thing will reveal itself.
Or Heather, you won't believe how often that happens. And I do a lot of expose of sort of fake truthers and fake truth movements, but it's exactly how it happens for me. What do I know? And it always reveals itself. And you just look at the basics and keep it simple. And really, it's the basics and keeping it simple comes down to, for me, maintaining your fundamental orientation, which, as you said, is the absolute truth.
Right. Well, and you're going to, everyone asks me, okay, transparency. Yeah, I worked with Secret Squirrel, part of the banking industry, and all of that. Cobra is, okay, I'll give you an example. Cobra is really in my focus right now.
Okay.
Never has been. In fact, I didn't even know the guy existed until after December 25th. And AK American Kabuki, talks about him, he's met him. And so I talked to him for a few minutes, and he didn't have a voiceover, didn't have any kind of, covering of his voice at all. And yet the questions that he was asking me were questions that I know in the banking field or in the legal field, when they're hiding something, that's why it just kind of struck me funny. And then I just set it aside because it wasn't, part of what is the focus now. The focus now is just, disclosing, getting the ball rolling at the time. Now I want to know who everybody is for the fun of it.
Yeah.
And the people are asking, because people rely on Cobra, they rely on Drake, they rely on, just as they did on their quote unquote governments, before it all started to fall down. So what I ask is, okay, be transparent. That's the one thing I do know. For those Eternal Hearts that are working consciously right now, they're absolutely transparent, and they have no problem with all the absolute data, not one piece missing, being put on the table. That's what I do know as far as the template goes.
Okay. I'll ask you, it's funny when you mentioned Cobra to me the other day when we've been speaking. Someone sent me an email to me that day asking if I was going to see Cobra in London. He's doing a talk there. I didn't realize. For some reason
I didn't realize either until last night.
Yeah, I don't even know who he is or what he is or anything about him.
He's supposedly with Resistance that are working on the ET level, the multi-dimensional level, and I do work with those particular dimensional levels. Mm-hmm. So for me, this is a learning experience for them too, because their whole worlds are shifting as well. So there's a lot of surprises that were built in for everyone to come into this moment. As far as Cobra and those guys, I love at least the purported theory of what they're doing, working for the highest good of all, to go in and fight for this, that, or the other. But the fight's over. And the fight was an illusion to begin with. So what I would like to do, and I reached out and just gave them data and said, here, know what my energy pattern is. I'm absolutely transparent. I'm not going to encrypt these files. I'm not going to encode these files. Just sending it to you. In fact, I'll do it over Skype, right? So at this point, it's just a matter of transparency. And that's where the safety, the security, the absolute protection is in transparency.
Now, let me ask you, Heather, you don't see any time in the future, near future, now that we've sort of broken all the banks and all of that, then suddenly turning around, okay, we're turning on the population, martial law, let's bring on World War III. You don't think we're going to see people being arrested en masse for no reason, put into concentration camps and forced to comply if they don't? Are we beyond that? Are we actually beyond that now? Have we gone past that in our battle lines?
Absolutely. That is not going to happen.
Fantastic.
And it's not going to happen because there are certain energy patterns that are very close to source pattern, if not source pattern, that are actually here to ensure none of that happens. So, there's the same bureaucracy and all the crap that you see in the quote-unquote governments happens in the light worker community as well, which is something that we've been very focused on. I think it was during Foster Gamble issue where he was just about to launch Thrive, and I just sat for the last 10 months watching BP funnel all of their holdings, their ownership rights, restructuring all of their beneficiaries into green. And they do what's called a phoenix, okay? And what happens is the phoenix is required when all of a sudden somebody gets too close to the truth and may uncover the slavery system and the principles and the beneficiaries. So they re-phoenix into something that people will hold on to, launch onto, fight into. And the new age, and the green was another. That's why they put Al Gore at the top to make, manage that particular one.
So that's what Thrive was. I have to agree. When I watched Thrive, I just was like, oh my God, this is a load of crap. Because I don't want to be disrespectful. There's a lot of good information in there. But I felt like they've basically gone, Procter & Gamble, terrible history there. They've basically gone, jumped onto a good thing and tried to parlay it for their own good PR.
Well, yeah, I mean, I had conversations with Proctor through, the public trust even had to clean itself out here. And it wasn't the trustees that did it. It was the actual Eternal Hearts embodied in some of the people that were calling themselves trustees. And one of them was Susan Day Hamley. Susan Day Hamley, whose sister is Hillary Clinton's aide. And she's really tight with Foster Gamble. Mm. And so they went in, and Lisa, I can't remember Lisa's last name. She was with LA Occupy Wall Street. Okay. And Occupy Wall Street was the bank pump. That's all that was. And talking with Foster, I already knew I could put the dots together because, Procter Gamble is one of the big ones. Mm. That is a principal, actually they're more of a broker, a beneficiary. But all of a sudden, Foster, what my instinct was, knowing how the Phoenixes work and watching it all start to move 10 minutes prior, was that Foster was chosen within the principals to go ahead and be the poster child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I addressed that and brought that up, and then I went to all of my contacts and said, this isn't going to be permitted. This isn't allowed. So either you're going to take care of it, Foster's going to take care of it, or we'll take care of it. And at that moment, Thrive started kind of right there, and then it didn't take off like it was actually supposed to, like it was planned to. And the boys tried to, the CIA and everyone else just sort of kept it real quiet and buried, and thought if they buried it for a while, they could bring it back up in a year and a half or so, or 2 years. And that's really kind of what Thrive is doing now, isn't it? It's coming back out.
Well, I remember they at first, they put it on the internet for free, and then all of a sudden you had to buy it, and then when nobody wanted to buy it, they put it back out for free. All sorts of nonsense. But let me give you the bottom line is, being someone who is, I'm an avid researcher. I've sit in the Bibliotheca Philosophica Hermetica, which is got the biggest collection of ancient esoteric and Gnostic texts outside the Vatican. I'm a member there, and I've gone through stuff that you need to be sitting in one of these oxygen tight chambers to look at. Okay, now I've seen and I've looked through and I've done the research. I'm not just a laptop researcher. I'm not a researcher where I rehash other people's stuff. I've actually gone and looked through the archives myself. And one thing I'm fanatical about is Vatican Catholic history. There's a scene in Thrive where they talk about how money became manipulated, and they've got these little animated figures, but they don't relate it to being, the Knights Templar who started the first sort of, lending out money at interest. That scam. They don't even distinguish the characters with any features. They just so inane little blobs of human sort of representation. What they should have done is had these guys in sort of knights uniforms and had them represented in castles, in this one little, I think it was a 3-minute cartoon sketch within Thrive, trying to represent how the money was started without leading it back to Rome. Because anything that all roads lead to Rome, anything that tries to point away from Rome is part of the illusion and the distraction. That's how I knew Thrive. When I saw that, I was like, hang on. That's what you say. You know what you say. What you said earlier is, what do we know? Always look at what do we know.
Right.
And that's when I was like, hang on. We know that this isn't right. And there's so many things. I can point out so many things within Thrive, right down to the facts that there was a woman there, one of the elderly lady. Her surname was Marks Hubbard. I mean, that's L. Ron Hubbard. She's related to L. Ron Hubbard. The guy who started Scientology.
Yep.
So there's a lot there, okay? There's so much that you could go into and start picking apart with regards to Thrive. But anyway, off the Thrive topic, I don't want to get into that too much more. Let's get back onto the recorded conversation. Heather, what do you reckon people, your best advice for people on the ground now around the world? How do we now actively start, stopping the slavery, stopping the suffering, getting to a place where we can just do and be whatever it is we want?
Well, first I would state this. Anything that you see in the slavery systems right now, the spigot has been turned off. Okay, the only energy they're running on is what was in the tube, so to speak, when the spigot was turned off. And they're scrambling around right now for any energy that they can go in and steal from. And they're having to do it amongst themselves at this point, because the people are just being and doing. So that is the key. And I knew that was going to be key. Everyone knew it was going to be the key. That's why they spend so much time trying to manage the quote-unquote human capital. So being and doing is the most important thing that you guys can do right now. Because if you be, that means they can't take value or credit from that being. Because you're going to consciously be being. Now, you may not know how to be, but it's as simple as having conversation like we're having now. It's as simple as looking in the archives. It's as simple as going out and interacting with your children. It's as simple as going out and saying, when someone approaches you, you have to do this. Well, wait a minute. This is who I be. Now, tell me who you be. And be kind. Be gracious. Understand that not many people within the slavery systems right now are comfortable because they are feeling a lot of guilt. And a lot of them entered into that system thinking they were really helping people. So at this point, being and doing is very important. It is the key.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a wonderful note to end on. Listen, Heather, thank you very much for your time. I know it's precious being a mother of four, and what a wonderful thing you have done. And your wisdom is really of an advanced spiritual level, and definitely everything you said has resonated with me, and it's been such a privilege to get this information from you. Thank you so much. Let's do it again.
Yes, Mel, thank you so much for the opportunity, and I really look forward to doing some more with you.